In our continuing series of getting ready for the upcoming FMDX season, today we take a look at forecasting for DX events. Pretty cool, isn't it? To be able to know if tomorrow, if I turn my FM radio on, if I'm going to experience DX or not. Well, we unfortunately can't do that with all propagation types, unfortunately, but we're getting pretty good at one particular kind, and that's called Tropo, or Tropo if you want to be scientific about it. Tropospheric or tropospheric ducting is a phenomenon that's usually driven highly by weather, and because of that, because we can forecast the weather, we can forecast DX, and there's one guy in particular who has the lockdown on the intel you need to know if Tropo is heading your way. That's Bill Hepburn and his Tropo forecast. Let's dig in. Bill Hepburn's DX Info Center, DX Info Center, recenter.com. Very famous website amongst DXers. There's all kinds of stuff here. It's not even just the FMDX stuff, y'all. It's station lists. It is like NDBs. Like when I do my NDB long wave DX, he's got an NDB list here. He's got a bunch of station lists, including things like maritime, time signals, aeronautical, meteorological, like you name it. This guy's got it here, right? It's up. You'll also see here, this is the one we're here for. This is the famous one, the tropospheric ducting forecast. So because Tropo is influenced heavily by weather fronts and what's happening in the troposphere of the atmosphere, it's influenced by weather. And because we can forecast weather, we can usually forecast Tropo openings as well, pretty easily, pretty well, fairly accurately. So if I click here on the map, you'll go right to the Tropo forecast. Now, this right now will default to Eastern North America, but I can then select whatever region you might be in. So let's say you're in Europe and you want to see what the forecast is. Well, here's Europe. Here is Central South America, right? So just pick the region that you're in. I'll choose Gulf Caribbean because that's kind of where I'm at. And I also like to look down a little bit further to my south and see how deep into Mexico and Central America and Cuba these openings get from where I am. So a couple things you'll want to know about this map. Number one, this is for personal hobby use only. So don't be posting this on your websites, on social media. Don't post this maps. Put a link. Say, hey, go look at Bill's website here for the forecast. But it looks like it's pretty cool, blah, blah, blah. Just, this guy puts a lot of work into these things, right? There's a tremendous amount of effort and work that has gone into putting this together. So let's make sure that we keep this for personal use only, right? The forecast is going to be in 3-hour intervals for the first 36 hours that we're looking at here. And then in 6-hour intervals for the remainder of the 6 days. So there's 6 days in this forecast. Every day around 1800 UTC, he posts the updates or the updates post. For the first 36 hours of those, it's going to be in 3-hour increments, and then it bumps out to 6 hours. So just like with the weather forecast, I would say anything more than like 4 or 5 days, it's going to probably change. Okay. Anything within 3 days, a little more likely that what you see is what you're going to get. It's more likely at least. So how this basically started, he started with like a chart back in a long time ago because he has a meteorological background. He started with a chart where he would basically say, okay, these are the areas that should be getting Tropo and things like that based on the forecast models that were available. And he uses the Canadian model for his modeling. And you can actually see here, scroll down to the bottom, there's a history of the tropospheric ducting forecast. And you can read all about how he got started when he was starting out as a DXer and also in his meteorological background. So now it's on a map. Back I think in early 2000s, he started putting it out on a map. So you can actually see where the Tropo is supposed to be occurring. And he's come up with something, I think it's called the Hepburn Index, right? So from 0 to 10 plus. And it doesn't have to stop at 10. It goes way beyond 10. But this tells you an approximation of how strong the opening is. So obviously, the higher up on the scale you go, the stronger the signals are going to be, the more Tropo you're going to experience, right? So when you look over here, in this little part over here next between Baja and the mainland of Mexico, there's always pinks and grays and whites over here, which is off the charts on the Hepburn scale. So there's always some very strong Tropo right here off the Mexican coast. Here where I am in the Gulf, we get pretty good Tropo as well. We have some coming up later this week that looks like it's gonna be pretty nice actually. But you can see here all the different colors. So basically, where you see the colors is where Tropo conditions would be occurring. Now, obviously, a lot of it's over water because what causes Tropo or tropospheric ducting, what causes these are inversion layers. So typically, when you look at temperature gradients from the surface of our planet and you go up in elevation, the warmest is going to be at the surface. And then as you go up in elevation, it gets colder and colder and colder. Well, if you flip that around, it's called an inversion layer. And that means it's cooler down at the surface than it is up above. And you have warmer air as you go up. And when you have that, that actually has a tendency to bend and refract FM signals back down. Because typically an FM signal, you have two kinds of signals that come out of the transmitting tower of the FM station. You have one that's going line of sight. It's called line of sight. And so it's going outward from the transmitting tower based on the antenna pattern that's there. And so if my antenna can see that signal that's coming out from that tower, right? Because usually they're very, very tall. That's why FM towers are so high up in the air. Their towers are so tall because they want line of sight to increase their coverage around their coverage area. So if my antenna can see that tower, I've got line of sight coverage. I can hear them, right? So here in Mandeville, where I am, even though they're above the horizon, across the horizon as I can see, the towers are so tall, they send out that signal. My antenna can see the signals from New Orleans, so I can hear these New Orleans stations. And line of sight's usually good for about 100 miles, 150, something like that, somewhere in that area, depending on what kind of antenna you have, depending on the strength of the tower and how high they are, your elevation, all those kinds of things can play into it. The other way that signals come out of FM towers is right up straight, man. It's going out into space. And typically that's what happens. They just keep on going until they get into space, and then they keep going beyond that at the speed of light, just out. But what happens sometimes is we get these little things that occur in our atmosphere or our ionosphere that send that signal back down. It doesn't keep going into space, it sends it back down. So sporadic E is when you have in the E layer, the ionosphere, you have ionization of like this metallic kind of nature that the signal bounces off of that, comes back down to Earth. Well, in Tropo, it's weather that bends that signal back down to Earth. So the example I like to give, if you've ever been sitting at the beach and like you see a ship that's going out over towards the horizon, but it looks like it's actually coming up, like you can actually kind of see it, like it looks like it's above the water. That's bending. That's an inversion layer that's causing that bending. You'll see that sometimes where like you can see a very far away city sky line across like the Great Lakes in the U.S. or something like that, right? You can see these very distant city skylines, even though you should have no reason to be able to see them. It's because the light, just like radio signals, are bending because of this inversion layer. Okay, so there's all the science talk. So what happens on this forecast map is we're saying where that inversion layer is going to happen. Where will they be bending FM radio signals back down to Earth so they can be heard from much further than 100, 150 miles. So in this case, you'll see here on the map, we have yellows and oranges right off the east coast of the U.S. and down in here in the Gulf. And then closer in towards where I am here in Louisiana, we see more purples and blues. That means it's more out in the Gulf. The conditions are right in the Gulf, not so much back inland where I am at right now. That will change, but right now that's kind of how it looks. You'll see this, like right here, you'll see this nice long line. That's usually a front, like a weather front, like a cold front or something like that. Out ahead of that front, you'll get some temperature inversions, and then or along the front, you'll see some inversions that happen. And then on the back side, it just, especially cold fronts will come in, they'll just clear it all out, and then the conditions are dead band. And we can actually see that here. As we kind of zoom through these maps. So when you're looking at the maps, the one thing you'll notice up here at the top is the time that it's valid for. This is 1800 UTC Tuesday. It is right now, let's see, 0136 UTC on Wednesday morning. So I'm going to just go forward. Now, see, I mentioned this was a front. Watch how this line right here pushes forward and clears out what's behind it, right? It just kind of clears out. Now, this one isn't as intense, but you'll see some of these, especially in the spring or fall, where it just comes through and like it just leaves nothing in its wake. That front just comes through and just clears out any moisture, any kind of inversion layer. It's just either all hot or all cold and just nothing behind it. So, and right now around 0-100 UTC Wednesday, 0-300, somewhere in here is what I would be experiencing right now. And truthfully, it's deadband conditions right now. And you can see right here is Lake Pontchartrain. I'm right in the north of that. There's no Tropo here. And that's validating right now. There's no Tropo here. Now this, I do want to put a disclaimer on this. This is not specifically talking about FM signals. This is talking about VHF signals. VHF signals are the ones that typically can be bent back to Earth because of temperature inversions, right? And it starts higher in the VHF spectrum, and then it works its way down. So you'll see tropospheric ducting happening on like 162 megahertz NOAA weather radio band. You'll see it happening on 2 meter ham radio band, like APRS and things like that, before you'll see it on FM. And it'll start usually from the top of the FM band and work its way kind of down. So just because you have tropospheric ducting forecasted in your area doesn't mean you're necessarily going to experience Tropo on FM in your area. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. It depends on the strength and the characteristics of that particular event. So another resource that he actually links to here is the current conditions, the APRS map that a lot of folks like to look at. Well, this is going to show you basically what APRS ham radio stations are hearing each other. So if I'm in Louisiana and I'm hearing an APRS 2 meter station from Florida, I've probably got some Tropo happening in Florida, right? Well, right now there's not a whole lot going on here. Sometimes you'll see these big red blobs on the map. Well, that's meaning that there's a more distant reception happening on 2 meters, and that can be indicative that a Tropo opening is occurring. Well, that doesn't mean that FM's getting in on that. It just means that 2 meters, there's some propagation occurring. Maybe it's going to happen down at FM, maybe it's not. That's why Weather DX has become very popular in the last several years, is because it's a little higher than the FM band, so that 162 megahertz, they get Tropo sometimes that FM doesn't. It can also be a nice little early warning. If you want to see us talk about DXing NOAA weather radio stations in the United States, let us know in the comments down below. We might do a video about that for you. But let's take a look here at this map. So I'm going to go back here to 0-100, 0-300. So as I either click on the map with my mouse, or if I use my left-right arrows here, I can kind of fast forward or go backwards in time. Again, 6 hours, 3-hour intervals for the first 36 hours, 6-hour intervals every hour after that, every day after that. So here we are. It's 0-300 Wednesday, 0-600. It's really kind of clearing out. I want to show you, though, as we get in here, now it's starting to build back in. It's Thursday, 0-600 UTC. It's building back in. It's really pushing inland now. You see all this. So what I would expect here, in Louisiana where I am, right here above Lake Pontchartrain, that I would have some Tropo conditions that are pushing me into Mississippi, and possibly over here and towards Mobile and Biloxi over here in Mississippi and Alabama. Possibly over here into Texas and Southwest Louisiana as well. There's a little bit of a gap right here, but let's just pretend there was land down here. I would have a nice little funnel down into here. Now, does that mean I could potentially have some conditions down into Mexico? Possibly. Depends on how strong that duct is and how significant it is. A lot of times what you'll also see is as you get into the daylight hours, the Tropo burns off. Now, it doesn't always. I've had multi-event all day long for several day events go on, but a lot of times you'll see it'll flare up in the morning, and then as the day comes along and the sun comes out, it burns it off. And then the nighttime, it starts to come back around sunset, comes back again. You get this overnight kind of inversion layer, and then boom, you got some Tropo. So you'll see that a lot of times here on the map, like it'll be raging, and then all of a sudden it starts to clear out, and you're like, what's going on? Oh, it's the daytime. Sunlight's out, right? So there we go. Look at that. This is 1200 UTC on Friday morning. That's around 7 o'clock in the morning my time. So this is right around sunrise-ish. Intense Tropo right here. So I would definitely be looking towards my east and my west in this case, but especially my east up here in Mississippi, Alabama, Birmingham, and Montgomery up in this way. I'd be looking definitely over here. The Florida Panhandle, things like that would be what I'm kind of focusing on. This might give me a path into Florida, or down even towards Mexico a little bit. It might be a path down here into the eastern coastline, Gulf Coast line of Mexico. So those are the kinds of things. Wow, look at that. Nice little boop. Definitely think I might have a shot at some Mexico here, potentially, depending on how this kind of links up. And continues, pushes in. Yeah. So, oh, wow. Yeah, that's going to definitely give me some stuff down here on the coastline. So, again, some of these are a little bit further out. So the further out you go, 3-4 plus days, take it with a grain of salt. One of the things that you can also experience sometimes, and I want to show you guys a analysis that I did. This is from my online FM logbook. And we had a Tropo opening here on the 8th of August last year that was just unbelievable. It was completely inland. And this actually gives me a chance to demonstrate another way to kind of read this map. This was the forecast map for this day, August 8th, for 1200 UTC. That was 7 a.m. What you'll notice here is we have this very strong duct. And by that, I mean, look around. There's some marginal stuff on the sides of it, but this super, like, narrow cone almost here of pretty strong tropo that was happening right in this area right here. And so it was centered right here on Missouri, Arkansas, and Mississippi, right to my north. Now, I was just on the outside of that. We had some tropo conditions in here, but it was kind of right? But what happened is this was a duct. This was actual, like, duct. So these signals were traveling along this duct. And just like you would think, if it's like, pretend that's a pipeline, it's going to come out the other side. Well, guess what? I was the other side. So I experienced this tropo. And I did this whole analysis on it, kind of looking at the weather conditions and everything else. But if you look at my loggings from that day and overlay it on top of the tropo forecast map from Bill, you'll see, here I am in Mandeville here, all of these stations that were logged along and out on the other end of that trough, that tropospheric duct, right? So this aligned perfectly. So sometimes you want that colored area to be right on top of you and connecting you to other areas, and that would be kind of an indication of where you would be looking. Other times, it can be just to your north or just to your south, or it can be just over towards you. But if it's kind of pointing in your direction and you're on the other end of that thing, you might get some tropo that way as well. So just some things to kind of think about as you're looking at this tropo forecast. It's not always just, are you in the color, the browns and the yellows and the reds and the pinks and stuff. It's not just about being under that area. Long story short, when you're looking at this tropo forecast, what you're looking for are areas that are on this scale down here at the bottom. You want to be either under it or right next to it. And the closer you are to it, the better chances you are of hearing some tropo. Or if you're like here, like let's say this little skinny line right here, this front, anywhere along this line, you have a shot at getting some tropo, right? And maybe this will produce something on FM, maybe it won't. But at least you have a heads up that you want to look, right? So if you want to forecast, hey, how do I know if there's going to be tropo in my area? Go over into Bill Hepburn's tropo forecast. We put the link in the video description. Go to your Eastern North America, or wherever you're located in your specific area, and look and say, do I have any tropo heading my way? Look at this starting to flare up over here on the Great Lakes area here, right? They're starting to get a little tropo in that area, right? So am I going to have anything in my area? Well, here's the East Coast. They're getting something. A little bit here along this, looks like a little frontal line developing right here, right? That kind of pushes down further south. Look at the tropo, a little marginal, but some tropo happening up here in the Great Lakes. Another little line pushing through. So those are the things that you can kind of keep an eye out for to know if tropo is going to be happening in your area. Bill Hepburn's DX Info Center, and then click on the banner for the tropo forecast. Bookmark this thing because you're going to want to frequent this, especially this time of the year through good parts of the summer. Fall is also another secondary season. In addition to like coastal areas where we see a lot of these tropo events, or if you're around large enough lakes, you can get a tropo event across the lake. A couple of years back, we had a super big high pressure system just sitting over top of the center of the United States and just baking like Indiana and Illinois and Iowa and Missouri and Arkansas. Let me tell you what, it created this bubble. This heat dome is what they call it. The heat dome. That bubble had Tropo all through it. Okay. So you would have amazing Tropo conditions underneath that heat dome, because it would basically give you, especially at night when things would cool off at the surface and everything, you'd have these inversion layers that would develop. And so a big heat dome high pressure system can give you Tropo, especially inland coastal areas. That's going to give you, as that sea breeze comes in, especially, you're going to have a little cool down at the surface, hotter air above it. There's your inversion layer. So this forecast can give you a chance to be able to spot that, identify it, know when to tune in, and hopefully get some DX. Hopefully this video has been helpful for you, giving you something to kind of think about, help you be able to spot those DX openings. If so, we'd love it if you give us a thumbs up on this one, give us a like, and leave a comment down below. That's a huge help for us here at the channel. And as well, if you have not yet subscribed, to be sure that you do so and click the bell icon to be notified when new videos are available. From all of us here at DX Central, my friends, take care. 73 best of DX. Now let's go back, hit the bands.